Well, hey everybody, thanks so much for joining us today to talk about songwriting. I'm here, I'm joined by some of my friends and some of my colleagues. Matt Crocker is with me, one of our great songwriters. Also Hannah Hobbs, who's joining us on Zoom, and Ben Tan. And we wanted to start by talking a little bit about collaboration. It's a huge part of our songwriting culture, and one of the things on a personal level that I feel like has really helped me as a songwriter sharpen the tools and the skills that I have, but I've seen that with my peers as well, that working together is an incredible way not just to get the best possible song result, but also to improve as a songwriter. So we wanted to talk a little bit about some of those principles and some of the things that we've learnt as individual songwriters along the way. And then we also, in our second segment, wanted to talk about one of the great songs that's come out of our church called I Surrender with Matt. And then we'll be talking about a newer song called Never Walk Alone in our third section. So stay with us and check them all out, and hopefully there's something in that for you as a songwriter. So I wanted to start off and just get the ball rolling by talking about collaboration. And when you sit down to co-write with somebody, is there something that you do or one of your peers does that's quite distinctive that you've noticed and that helps the session? Crocker.
That's funny, 'cause I was like thinking about that before. Like, I don't know if there's something that someone does every time we start a song, but I feel like these guys at least, it's always pretty natural. Like, we just sit down and it's kind of like, has anyone got an idea? Or like someone will just sit down and start singing something like out of nowhere. And it's usually, what I love about songwriting with other people is it just sparks ideas. Like for me, like I can be on my own and I'll be just racking my brain forever. But there's something about being with other people, and it ignites ideas out of nowhere. And you find stuff you would never have found. So I don't know if there's something distinctive or like that happens every time. I feel like it's quite random, but usually something comes, and it's for us, like we're always aiming to leave a session having something. So you can at least come back to it and visit it later. Otherwise, you get a whole song in a session. That's the dream, but quite rare, I think.
Yeah. Han, what about you?
I mean, the first thing that I think of, Ben, is how pretty much every time we've ever written together, you play like an ambient pad, like an atmosphere type pad that just goes for the whole session. And it's quite funny, but it also, I think that's kind of cool. It helps us just, particularly when writing like a worship song, to actually imagine like what it's like to be in a service, and it makes you think about what it would be like in church if we were going to sing this song. So I think that's one thing that comes to mind. And for Ben Tan, I always think of like you always have these like memos of like vocoded melodies that often have no words or English, but they sound like something. So you'll be like, I've got this idea, what about this? And I also find that super inspiring, because it's like I can hear what it could be, but you can't hear anything at the same time.
I feel like I do that on purpose because it's like you don't want to implant too much into someone's head where they're like, oh, I don't, like they can only think one way. So yeah, I guess you could call it a quirk, is that like I just never put lyrics on any roughs.
So one of the things that I think is really important as sort of a building block, not just as a writer, but being a good collaborator, is being able to listen, to be able to listen to feedback on your ideas, but also to be able to hear what somebody else hears in their ideas, even if they don't hit you initially as you know, being a given for the song. And these guys all do that really well. So maybe Matt, if you could speak to that, like what are you looking for in a session in terms of like, how do you listen to other people's ideas, and at the same time even be trying to get a sense of whether what you're putting out, the ideas you're putting out, are actually resonating?
I would say my strength with songwriting would be melody. Like that's always the thing I hear first. Like it's funny because my wife will know every lyric to any song, and I'll know melodies to any song, but I couldn't tell you lyrics for anything. So the thing that's catching me in that first moment where we're starting to go through ideas is what's happening in the melody. And I feel like there's an authenticity attached to a melody that I'm looking for, especially when it comes to worship. And so if something grabs me that's melodic, that actually just stirs me in a certain way, then that's the thing that I'll gravitate towards. But then there's those things that, like, when it comes lyrically, like, I think at the end of the day, a song is only as strong as its lyric. And so if you hear something lyrically that's just so profound and like it's either an old thought said in a new way or it's just a completely new thought, like those are the things I'm kind of looking for in a lyric that you can base a song on and go thematically from there.
And so, Han, what happens if you don't see eye to eye on where a song should go? Like, you've kind of got these sort of almost competing ideas about what the song should be.
Yeah, I think a big part of collaboration is like trusting the person you're working with. Like, ultimately, and this is, I would say, to be honest, is probably the thing that's changed most in me as a writer. Like, earlier on, like when I was, especially those first years of writing, I think I was definitely like oversensitive about ideas that I was bringing to the table, or like if someone were to push back on something, you would feel a bit like you needed to protect that idea or whatever. But I think now I've learned how to just like lean in and trust the people you're collaborating with and working with. Like, because the point is you can kind of end up with an outcome working with other people that's completely different to something I would come up with by myself. And that's kind of where the magic happens, is when you work it out together. So if there is some kind of, you know, if, say, for example, all of us were writing together, I had an idea and you guys or one of you felt it should go a different way, I think now I'd like to think I'm definitely listening and I want to explore that other option, because if it does go away I wasn't thinking it should, but we might stumble into something that's even better and more unique than anything I would have come up with by myself. So I like to explore those paths now and like go, cool, okay, I was maybe I was feeling this, but let's go down that path and dive deep there and see what comes out. And I've found in an encouraging way that it leads to really cool stuff.
I had like complete opposite. Like when I started writing was like encouraged to be open-handed with my ideas.
Yeah.
So now I'm finding I need to do the other as well, like learn how to actually protect an idea I think is like something God's actually, you know what I mean, instilled in me for this song. So like I'm too easy like to just throw an idea to the side and like, yeah, okay. But then sometimes I need to be like, actually, I think this is maybe something we need to hook into and just see where that is going. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, that is really interesting. I think the same thing. Like, it's sort of finding that balance between, you know, knowing what you've got a conviction about, and then also it's that tension because, you know, you're in a session with different people and that's going to lead the song into a different place. And so I think, you know, sometimes it's accepting that, you know, if you're in the room with 2 or 3 people, you want to basically find the idea that everybody's excited about. And that's one of the things that you said before, like it's almost immediate feedback on a song because, you know, you could sit in your room for hours, you know, messing with an idea, and as soon as you show someone, you realize it was no good. But in a collaborative kind of context, you're putting out ideas and you're seeing kind of what resonates with people. But I'd do the same, like encourage you to make sure if you are in a session, you've got a conviction about an idea, to kind of, you know, to back it in enough that people in the session at least know that you're really passionate about it. Because it might be something then that you sit on for a little bit longer and it sparks something else. Ben, wanted to ask you about being adaptable in a collaborative setting. How much do you feel like you have to change the way you write depending on who you're in a room with?
The biggest thing I've learned is that there isn't power in like dominating a session and being like my way's right, my way's always right, because like, you know, it's like the power is an agreement between all of the people you're writing with and having that idea that everyone's like, oh, this is so exciting, come out. So what I like doing is if something was going off the road a bit where I'm like, oh, I don't know if that like people are actually gonna like that, I just try to like slowly like tilt it in or, you know, give an idea. But I guess it's like always having an idea to say rather than being like, no, that's not good, that's not good, that's not good. You know?
Yeah, I really like that. You do that really well. That's one of the things, Ben, like he's always sort of messing around in the back of a session, just putting different sounds in, different little hooks and throwing ideas, which I think like you're a genius at that because almost by osmosis then you start to basically write what Ben's writing. So like... so maybe just to finish up, before we move on to talk about I Surrender in segment 2 with award-winning songwriter Matt Crocker. Han, did you want to just talk a little bit about the fact that, you know, sometimes the most, you know, the best collaborators aren't necessarily the most prolific in terms of like dumping ideas into a session. Maybe they sit back a little bit and they almost coach a session. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think a big part of writing successfully with people and collaborating that leads to good songs is about reading the room. And so I do find, like, it depends on who's there and what's happening in the session. Like, for example, if there's someone, you know, I think of someone like Ben Hastings, who's like pretty known now as like an incredible lyricist. Like, he's amazing at it. And so in that session, if I'm working with him, I want him to just run for it and do his thing and do what he does best, and then see what happens and see where we land, and then maybe kind of bring ideas to the table in terms of lyrics a little later on. But perhaps if I'm in a session where there's not that leading type lyrics person necessarily, or I'll dive into that side of things. So I find like it is about reading the room, and you just want momentum. Like, if an amazing idea is coming from somewhere, you've got to create some space to let that grow and see what happens with that. But yeah, it's interesting. I think, I don't know about you guys, but I don't ever feel like I go into a session with this idea that's so prolific or amazing. I'm very much like trusting the other people in the room and just looking to see how things land with them. And if I think this could be cool, but what do you think? And seeing what their perspective is. And I think it's, for me personally, it's very much like a growing process. And I guess what Ben Tam was saying before, like chipping away at things and taking, like, often if Ben Tan and I are working together, you know, it's a lot of chipping away. It's like we have an idea, there's cool parts, what's sticking out, what feels like a little bit unnatural or feels out of character to the rest of the song. And you're kind of trying to get rid of the things that are a distraction to what you're trying to achieve with that song. So for me personally, it's rarely a prolific idea, and it's often just something cool or special or something that feels like it could be really profound, but a lot of little changes along the way to get it to the point where it feels like it could really land.
Thanks, Han. Yeah, thanks so much, everybody. That's probably all we've got time for in this segment, but I just wanted to encourage you as a songwriter to just lean into collaboration. Find people in your world that you can sit down with and work with, and people that you can bounce ideas off. So either whether they're finished songs or whether they're, you know, sections, and be genuinely open to the feedback that you get, because it's amazing how much you can learn from somebody else who is also passionate about the craft of songwriting. So all the best, God bless. We'll see you in segment 2.